When dissecting a lot of other horror films, I find that the antagonist is either a carbon copy of something that's worked before, or it's something that's been allowed to, either by the filmmaker and the actor, something that's been able to divulge into an area of psyche that either people don't like to talk about, or it's so common in our life, but we see it in a different way. So, in that frame of mind, I'd like to go through maybe how we could improve this trap. Not to sound too terribly morbid. Haven't really thought too much about it, but the beginning of the film, so it instantly sets up, I think he's either got a Fitbit on, or a smartwatch, or something like this. I mentioned before, he's a police officer, so instantly, before this scene, he is seen just sort of like walking around. He gets bumped into by this guy who's wearing, he looks like a young sort of guy who's wearing a disheveled sort of Uncle Sam outfit with the top hat and the tailcoat, the blue tailcoat. Awesome outfit. And bumps into him, so you get this antagonistic sort of feel of he doesn't like that, or he's not going to let that lie, just being bumped into for whatever reason. And then we're at a carnival too, so there's a lot of people moving around. But he's also wearing, it's not a Panama, I don't think it's a Panama, but it is definitely one of those style of hats that you would see around the Ecuadorian region. He's also wearing outfits of that nice sun-drenched area where you'd see those beach towns. He's wearing, like, I think it's a salmon, like a light salmon sports jacket, and wearing white pants and stuff like this, so he's feeling very Miami Vice from the get-go. But as he heads down there, he's got a gun, he's got a badge, he's got a belt, he's got leather shoes. I only mention these things because these are things that are all things that would be able to aid in a survival situation. Obviously a gun is a mechanical device that really can just do one thing, and that's destroy targets at a distance. Having said that, though, in a survival situation where you have to use anything as a tool, it gives you the perfect chance of using every other area of it. It's made out of metal. You can use that as a hammer, you know? Providing you're dangerous. Providing you're safe and not dangerous. Now, instantly, he's seen that and hasn't got any legs. So instantly, you would... Why you wouldn't call for backup? I know he's a crooked cop and whatever, but I don't think that there would be the chance of glory when you're going down a manhole into a sewer where you can't check. You have too many blind sights. You don't know what's around any of the corners or how many people are down there. So instantly your psyche should have been bail, if not now. So we have a chloroformy type thing. I'm assuming that there's chloroform on that plastic sheet or whatever it is. So now the second that you're in this position, there's a lot of different things with the psyche of this. You want to try and get them incapacitated as soon as possible. And that's why I would be thinking you want to harness them. You want to put them so that they're feeling safe. They don't know where they are. They can see the train tracks in front of them. They know that this thing is uncomfortable on them, and their hands are bound at this point by, let's say, galvanized wire, something that you would use to hang pictures on the wall, and with twists, enough twists, probably at least 6 to do it. Hell, you could even get Hessian rope, not hemp rope, because hemp rope would be too comfortable because it has a natural lubrication with the oils in it. But Hessian is hard, it tears, it cuts, yeah, and with a noose as well, it's designed to, when it's being pulled, just tighten. And so every noose as well should have 6 bounds to it, at least 6, to make it a good, strong noose. But if that was around one wrist, and then the rest of the wrist was bound just enough that you would be able to get out of it with enough maneuverability, taking you a couple of minutes, then I think that would be enough discomfort and prove enough of the same point, whilst also giving you enough to hurt yourself, if that's really what your intent is as the designer, rather than to show them a chance of redemption and see their own wrongs and how they might be able to improve their life, which I do think is a better aspect to these films, concentrating on something where you can get out unscathed, but there is a decision that you have to make psychologically that is going to be difficult, not necessarily physical. Even the first trap in Saw, I think it was, you had to get out of the trap that was like a reverse bear trap, but she had to kill her boyfriend. I can't remember the insinuation of what justified him dying in a moral sense, but that was much more of a psychological trip that you had to take than cut your arm off, you know, or gouge your eye out or anything like that, because it took it away from you. You were going to have something that you didn't know was going to kill you. You didn't know how long you were going to die from that, or the pain that was going to go through that. So the fear involved in that, then coupled with the idea of someone that you love and care about, even if they have done wrong by you, even if this character of the boyfriend had cheated on them or murdered someone or done something, you know, on that same level of justification, you still got to do so much psychological maneuvering just to be able to, I would think that the normal person, the common psychology of what we would like to think of most people would be that you would have to justify doing that. The same as if we came home or your partner came home and said, okay, we're having chicken for dinner tonight, but they brought home a live chicken and they gave it to you and said, you have to break its neck. I'll pluck it, I'll skin it, I'll do all that, but you have to break its neck. I mean, how would you be able to do that? What would your reaction be? What would your feelings be towards that partner who's then just said that this is what you've got to do? Like, you know, as in, or would you feel okay with relinquishing that responsibility onto your partner and having them do it? Either by you watching it or not watching it, acknowledging that it exists. It's something that I think is really interesting, and these Saw films have a unique ability to do this without going the gore value. Obviously, you've got multiple different traps in all of these films, so why not throw one gore in there and one, like, you know, they're always fun, but the psychology is much more fun. So yeah, something that I think that you could get out of in a little bit of time, and anyone who's seen sort of magic videos, there's a lot of binding techniques, in which case you can maneuver something that you are bound with, even if somebody else ties you in that position, in so many movements. Once you've gotten through so many movements, you should be able to then easily get out of something, because loops are relatively simple in that sense. Having said that, if it's Hessian, it's something cutting into you, it's going to deter that. I would argue if my hands were bound behind my back with razor wire, I wouldn't even try and rip those things off. I might try and maneuver for a little bit, but I would get enough sensory reaction from those blades to know that it wasn't worth doing it. Because again, you've still got to then try and get through your mouth. That's why I was saying things about, like, you've got razor wire now, so you could be using that to cut through the tongue on the inside of the where the apparatus is attached. Good. So if it was attached to the ceiling at this point, and somehow we've got motion sensors so that they can respond to if your eyes are open. If that started the video, I think that would be fine. But even if you're in this situation, you're instantly starting to think how you can get out or what you can do. You could argue too that if you got your belt off, you might be able to do something with the buckle. You've got another metal peg there. I still think that those two bolts would be the best way to get out of it. But if we were designing this and you had those bolts there, it's easy to weld. Even soldering those closed will do enough. Hell, I'd even argue covering them in a glue or an epoxy would do that, because you would have to break through the epoxy, in which case you would have to get something metallic like the razor wire or the belt buckle to be able to break through that. You can avoid those whole things altogether. Having said that, you've got to build this whole thing, and it doesn't seem to be a lot of welding on it. So you could even just like untwist enough of these things, but it's the timing issue which is really unique. And the other thing I thought was interesting about this is how he wakes up with enough time for that to be a factor. Yeah, that's another thing. The fact that he's hanging down from the top of a train track that's being used. Now, I don't know, again, if anyone works for the railways, if you know the interval that you would need, the time length that someone would need to be able to set this up, I don't think it would be possible. So there would be the argument that rather than doing this hanging from the top, either you have some sort of pre-existing apparatus that you're slowly building over a course of a couple of nights or days, in this interim, knowing that schedule, then you might be able to then just get straight in there and rig that straight up. But still, that's a lot. He's a hefty guy. You would need to have a lot of strength just to be able to lift him. Plus, then you also got a cathode ray tube television, which is the old box type TVs, which are very heavy in that glass frontage, and it's also obscuring the track, which was making me think. I wonder if that would derail the train. I don't think so, possibly, but there was that old argument that if you put pennies on the train, it would derail them, which I think was false, but because I've seen bent pennies, and I think that used to be a thing, but there used to be that analogy of don't do that because you don't want to cause a train wreck. So what I think would be just as easy enough, why don't you just have the apparatus that he's attached to bolted to either end of the wall? You have an extendable a picture hook or clothes railing in houses. If you have a hallway that's a certain length, you can literally extend this pole and just clamp it like that. You'd be able to build something like that where this apparatus that's already your tongue would be able to go to either end of the tunnel. Thus, if you were going backward and forward, you wouldn't be able to move it. That's stationary now, not you. That. So it's not your body weight that's doing it. It really is something that you have to work against. You can use your hands, you can do all this, but you have to push away from it. Yeah. This would have to have a redundancy issue, which would probably be triggered by when the train moves. Obviously, you wouldn't have. If you decided not to do this at all and were just like, I'm going to get hit by the train, then the apparatus that I'm saying would be attached to either end of the train walls might then disengage and collapse towards the train's direction. So it would be moving in the same direction as the train, purely to alleviate the stress on the train. Now, the downside to this is I still think that you would have the potential of collateral damage. It's still going to force the train to stop, but I don't know if a chain in the top of that carriage would do more to potentially derail or cause damage to both the driver and the train itself, thus its passengers and other carriages, or a low-lying, something about the same height as where the chassis, I assume it would be called, the main body of the floor of the train would be, which would have a lot more force to be able to brunt through that. Both the body of the person who's doing this, plus also those metal parts. But any of those metal parts hitting the tracks, I still think could further derail the vehicle. I'm not someone who's worked for the railway. I don't know anything about trains. I'm literally just speculating, but it's something if I was in that position, I would be thinking about, because it seems as if the collateral damage isn't the intent of what the designer should be thinking about. It really shouldn't involve the public, I don't think. Or if it does, purely in a speculatory sense. And that would, again, move more into the psychology of the character who's designing these elements.
I want to play a game. The 3 train is arriving in 2 minutes. It is up to you to decide if this will be your final stop.
The 3 train. So the 3 train will be arriving in 2 minutes. If anyone is in America, do you know what that means? I'm assuming that means like in Australia we have the T4 line, the T3 line, so it's just something like that. And I'm not sure if it's New York, if that's where this is being set. The 3 train, 7 Avenues Express line map. So it's called the Bullet as well. So the cool thing is that you can actually go onto the website for the MTA, which I assume is the New York rail system, and it seems as if you can get maps, and it has all full terminology for these as well. So we had the 3 train, 7 Avenue Express. Now it seems like it doesn't have a physical map, it just has what looks like a time sheet and their destinations. Now, if there are other people out there who are dissecting this film, I would love to hear if you knew where you think this location could potentially be. When you look at the cataphiles and entering the catacombs of France, through the cataphiles technique, which is an underground group which know a lot more of the entrance points, because there's the catacombs of Paris go for miles underneath Paris, and there's many different entrances to there. Just like in Sydney, the old disused tunnel that went from Central Station through to, I think it was Circular Quay, because there are many entrances along that line, none of which I'm going to divulge in here, but if you look around the internet, same as if you look into the cataphiles, you'll be able to discern from landmarks, videos, and information that they share where these entry points would be. I would encourage you to be careful, though, because all of them are trespassing. So both for your safety, obviously, make sure that everyone's safe, and again, collateral damage is that part of safety, which is with great power comes great responsibility, and knowledge is a power. But also the collateral damage of the area. But also, yeah, too, you don't want to piss off the authorities, and I think that we should be trying to work with authorities in these areas. This is art and film, and all we're doing is asking questions, and that's always important because it's going to further our knowledge and hopefully make us smarter every day.